Good evening, fellow drinkers. How's it going? Just to check with you guys, can you do me a favor and just confirm that you can hear me okay? Because, like, this is the first time I've tried streaming with OBS. Can you guys hear me? Nice. Alright, good stuff. I was starting to worry that I was talking to myself there. This fucking setup that I've got is kind of shitty. Whoa, I just had a whole bunch of comments come in there at the same time. Nah, it'll be fine. Alright, so yeah, this session is just a kind of open Q&A session where I'm going to do my best to get through as many questions from you guys as possible. I'm kind of conscious that the last time I did a live stream, I had Balls Trek on and we were just kind of chatting amongst ourselves, and I probably didn't give the actual chat comments enough attention. So here I am, I'm kind of at your disposal for the next hour or two at least. What would you like me to talk about? Am I in a tunnel? No, I am in a room at the moment. Right. By the sounds of things, it's echoing quite a bit. Let me just check my settings here and make sure it's working. Yeah, it looks alright at the moment. Alright, well, I'm going to try and get through some of these questions. If it does keep echoing, I do apologise. I'll try and keep an eye on it, and if it causes problems, I'll look at my settings again. So, what have we got here? I sound like a Dalek. Sorry. Is The Rise of Skywalker going to be the best movie of 2019? Probably not. I don't think so, funnily enough. Will I poop on your chest? I'll get back to you on that one. When am I going to review the Mass Effect trilogy? Specifically the Commander Shepard trilogy. I've only played one of the Mass Effect games so far. It's probably going to be a while before I get around to doing all three because they're fucking enormous. So I'll need to wait on that one. I'm actually playing Metro Exodus at the moment on the PS4, and I'd be really impressed with that. It's a good game. It's very it's kind of a series of open worlds you get to go through, and the characters are really good. The dialogue's good, and it's a fun game. Right, what have we got here? What are you feeling on Disney and how it denied an L-boy the ability to have a Spider-Man on his tombstone? Yeah, that wasn't their finest hour. I think we'd all agree. I don't know if it was just some dumb lawyer or something that replied to that and didn't really think about what they were doing. But it's not a good look for them. Have I seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? No, I actually haven't seen it yet. I'm meaning to go to it next week and see it. I've just been kind of wrapped up in other things, so I haven't really had time. So I apologise for that. Drinker, you overt beacon of male dominance. Do you think social justice wars will bomb harder than the bombing of Hiroshima? Almost certainly. What do I think of the GTA series? I love them. GTA 5 was an incredible game. Even from a technical point of view, never mind like the storytelling or the humor or anything in it. The size of the game world was just incredible. So it was a phenomenal feat. So I really appreciate the work that they put into that. And it's interesting because the company that made it, Rockstar, they were based in Dundee, which isn't that far from where I live, and that's where they got their start about 20 years ago, and they've just been killing it ever since then. Can I do a review of Godzilla King of the Monsters? Yeah, I could review that. I'm not sure if there's enough booze in my drinks cabinet to get me through that movie, but I can give it a go. Thoughts on the passing of Rutger Hauer? Yeah, I mean, that guy was a legend. The original Blade Runner, which I guess is what he's going to be most known for, apart from Hobo with a Shotgun, was just one of those movies that kind of stayed with you forever. And his performance was something really remarkable to watch. I think probably everyone remembers the speech he gave right at the end as his final words, and apparently he came up with that himself. He just came up with it when they were on a break between scenes, so good on him. What are my thoughts on T2, good or bad? I think we can all assume that it's a good movie. That's the best Terminator movie that's ever been made and ever likely to be made. Even Terminator Dark Fate's not going to be able to equal something like that. And I genuinely consider T2 one of the best action movies of all time. It's not dated that badly at all. Even the special effects look pretty good by today's standards. Have I tried battered goat bollocks? No, they don't really sell them in Scottish chippies, unfortunately. We're all about battered pizzas and battered Mars bars, so that's the best we can do. It's a total mystery to me why obesity is such a problem in Scotland. Drinker, you absolute cathedral of sadly alcoholic though masculine writing behemoth, what do you reckon is your best published work? I've done quite a few books, but probably my favourite is one called Betrayal. It's the third book in the series that I've been writing, and in terms of like the plot and the way it all hangs together and the kind of character journeys that they go on, it's definitely my favourite. I put a lot into that book, and I think it turned out pretty good. I like T1 best. T1 is a funny one because it's a movie that really was better than it had any right to be. It wasn't done on a huge budget. It didn't have any big name stars at the time. Like even Arnold Schwarzenegger was still trying to like make a name for himself in movies, but it had James Cameron at the helm, and it just turned out pretty good. You know, ultimately T2 and T3 were kind of just remakes of it, the same basic concept, but you can see the way it's aged. Put it that way. It's definitely got a bit rough around the edges with time, but an excellent movie, like a really good action thriller. I've got a super chat here from Dane Hammett. How long do you think this overall far left pushing its agenda into movies will last? I wish I knew. In an ideal world, it would end like tomorrow, but it's going to come down to money ultimately. You know, a lot of the studios that push this stuff, I think, have got the mistaken belief that it's going to give them good PR and it's going to give them good reviews from the critics, which in a way it does, but I think they're becoming less and less relevant now, and that's what you're seeing in the kind of disparity between the critics' scores and the audience scores. On things like Rotten Tomatoes, the people who actually watch movies form their own opinions, and ultimately when they see too much politics intruding on their film and it starts to compromise the actual quality of the movie, they rebel against it, and they get pissed off because people don't want to be preached to ultimately. I think we probably all feel the same way. I want a movie to entertain me. I don't want it to tell me that I'm a bad person, or that I'm kind of responsible for all the world's ills. So I'd like to think, give it a few more years and a few more high-profile failures, they'll maybe start to learn their lessons. Braveheart or Trainspotting from Robbie Yap. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a massive fan of Trainspotting as a movie. Like, it was just one of those films that was on all the time, and it was very kind of emblematic of its time, I guess. But I've seen it so many times, it's just kind of worn me down. And I wasn't a huge fan of the sequel. I think it didn't really recapture the magic, and it was never gonna, because it was very set in its time, that 90s period in Edinburgh. So I would say Braveheart. I mean, it's wildly inaccurate from a historical point of view, but who cares? It's never gotten in the way of a good story anyway. Lieutenant Colonel Nicholson, I'll give you $10 to watch Shoot or Be Shot with William Shatner. Okay. Anything with William Shatner is always worth watching. Hey Drinker, what would be your opinion on an Avatar sequel? Yeah, I wish they wouldn't do it. When you actually look at the original Avatar, it was a weak story. It was a movie that was just held up by its special effects, which were great for the time, but it's a cliched and derivative sort of story. The actors weren't amazing, and none of the characters were particularly good. So this whole idea that Cameron's working on like 3 or 4 Avatar sequels is just insanity. It's just total self-indulgence on his point of view, and I think he would have been far better off spending his time doing other projects, like doing a Terminator movie and actually directing it himself. Is haggis as nasty tasting as it sounds? No, it's actually really nice, believe it or not. I have it regularly at breakfast time. It's very spicy. It's best not to think about what's in it, but it actually tastes pretty good. The consistency is a bit weird, but I do recommend it, and especially if you get one battered, it's very nice. Lieutenant Colonel Nicholson, watch Shoot or Be Shot with William Shatner. Okay, I will watch that movie. It is a movie, right? I'll take that as a yes. KOS listed. The left will never stop crying at the sky, even if everyone boycotts, get a financial bailout on the taxpayer dime. Drink, you ever seen Savage Land? It's a mockumentary, decent flick. No, I haven't. I haven't seen Savage Land actually. I've heard a little bit about it, but never watched it myself. If it's good, then I'll take your word on that. I will try and track it down at some point. Do you believe that Daniel Craig was a woke choice for Bond, being ugly and bland like a Terminator with minimal action? Yeah, I mean, I've never... Daniel Craig's an odd one because he's definitely got the kind of physicality for the role of Bond. Like, he's probably like the physically strongest and fittest guy who's ever played that role. And in something like Casino Royale, you really got to see that side of him when he was doing the chase scene at the beginning. I would argue he's not really how I imagine Bond to look, and especially when you compare him to guys like Connery and Moore and even Dalton. You know, he doesn't embody that kind of that charisma, I guess is the word. He doesn't have that kind of power about him that those guys did. So he's not a great. He's not been a great choice, I don't think, ultimately. And I think his apparent decision to bring in Phoebe Waller-Bridge to write the rewrites on the next movie was a terrible idea. I don't know why he thought that was a good idea, but I think ultimately it's gonna do serious damage to the movie's rep. How do I feel about the Alien prequels? Yeah, good question. I'm actually going to do a video, probably on both Prometheus and Alien Covenant, because those movies were just absolute garbage. The fact that they were done by Ridley Scott, like this guy who's produced some incredible movies in his time, it was just dire. They were pretentious. They were dealing with ideas that they didn't really know how to cope with. And they seem to have lost track of what made Alien such a compelling movie in the first place. This idea that you had like the space jockeys, they were this kind of unknown species that almost started the whole thing. We didn't know much about them because we didn't need to know. And this idea that they're trying to fill it in now and explain that they're a race of engineers that goes around the universe seeding planets and stuff, it undermines the whole mystery of it, and it takes away that fear of the unknown, because now you're telling us everything. And yeah, the fact that it was so muddled about what it was even dealing with, whether it was the xenomorphs or whether it was some other like species that was like a halfway house between them and the egg that it started off with. Yeah, bad idea, and there's so many better ways you could do Alien movies, so I am probably going to put out a video about that fairly soon. Rational Muscle, $20 from you, sir, thank you very much. I seek your wisdom. Is it better, as Thoreau once said, to suck the marrow out of this flickering life, or best to notice that Brie Larson is a worthless hack with a plank-like pooter that only a blubber-fueled feminist could love? Like, I think we all recognise that about Brie Larson. Most rational people would recognise she's not the most charismatic of actresses, and doesn't even really seem to want to be there. From what I understand, she actually gave a pretty good performance in that movie Room, which seems to be much more up her street. These smaller, more dramatically viable movies. She probably sees superhero films as being a bit beneath her, and so she just phones it in. And that's what we've ended up with. We've ended up with a Captain Marvel that no one really cares about, unfortunately. Thanks for answering about Mass Effect. No problem, Sean Thompson. Right. Sorry, I'm mangling your name here. Oli K Gaming. Drinker, you handsome devil. What do you think about Guy Ritchie, Snatch, Rock'n'Rolla, and maybe sequels? I really liked the Guy Ritchie movies back in the day. Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch, both brilliant films and brilliantly tight narratives. That everything kind of builds off each other. All the kind of different storylines which are told out of chronological order ultimately sync up. They're very clever movies, and he's obviously at home doing those kind of gangster, those London gangster kind of movies. His King Arthur movie was absolute garbage. It was just it wasn't the right forum for him. I did like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I thought that was actually a really good and really underrated movie. And Cavill had a good role in that film, so I enjoyed that. I think when Guy Ritchie finds his right niche, he's excellent. So yeah, the early movies were definitely his better ones. Please talk about your books. I could, but I would probably bore everyone who wants me to talk about movies. I have written books, 8 of them so far. They're halfway decent. You can find them on Amazon under the Ryan Drake series. If you read them, I hope you enjoyed them. Do you play a character which is an extension of your personality, or is it 100% pure-blood Scotsman? Well, most Scottish people are generally drunk most of the time. It's how we get through the horrifying misery of being Scottish. But you always exaggerate yourself a little bit for the sake of playing a character. I think the best ones that people play are just a hyped up version of themselves. So if you are a bit of a loudmouth and you like drinking, it's only natural that you would want to play that kind of sarcastic drunken character who just shoots his mouth off. So that's what I do. It's just me times 10. What's more likely to kill you, liver disease or a crazed SJW? Well, one's self-inflicted and the other one I can fight off with baseball bats with nails stuck in them, so I like my chances with the second one. What's your thoughts on Pulp Fiction? Also, M. Night Shyamalan. Yeah, like, Pulp Fiction, excellent movie, one of Tarantino's best. It's one of those films that's been seen and talked about so many times. There's not much I can add to the discussion, but excellent movie, excellent example of screenwriting and dialogue. Brilliant work. M. Night Shyamalan, again, he's one of those guys who he found his niche and he exploited it for a while, and that was great, but then he basically he burned out with his whole concept of always having this increasingly shocking twist. It got to the point where it was just kind of farcical. I did quite like Glass. I thought that was a good kind of return to form for him, even though the fight scenes were like the lamest thing ever. I liked the overall feel of it, and I like that sort of different spin on superheroes, being a bit more grounded and how they're constantly questioned and whether or not they're actually real. Watch The Boys. I am watching The Boys at the moment because, like, either hundreds of people have been really desperate for me to watch that, or one guy has just been spamming me for like weeks on end. I'm about 5 episodes in at the moment, so I'm going to wait until I finish the series before I review it. But I am gonna put out a video about it because it's great. Carl Urban is just such a funny character in it, and it's a great take on what superheroes I think would probably be like. People who aren't subject to any rules and laws, who can't be stopped, would just become totally narcissistic and become assholes. So I really enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to reviewing it. Last Jedi or Attack of the Clones? Fuck, man. Anything except The Last Jedi. I would take Attack of the Clones. I mean, it's a dumb movie, but at least it's not offensively dumb. John Dorsey, I send you a few US dollar bucks because you're one of the best things about YouTube. Thanks, man. Is that shameless? Maybe, but quality deserves praise. Well, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. What do I think about the movie Fight Club? One more, again, Fight Club is like Pulp Fiction. It's one of those films that's just almost essential viewing. Excellent movie, very smart. Probably doesn't seem smart now because that kind of twist has been done so many times and it's so iconic. But I think it's actually really relevant to today's society. This idea that sometimes people are so numb by like how pointless their lives can be that they would turn to violence to give them meaning, and give them something to something to experience, something that's more primal than just the sort of sanitized lives that they have now. So yeah, I think Fight Club is even more relevant now than when it first came out. Did I cry at the end of Braveheart? No, not really. I was just faintly disgusted by all the torture. It's just typical Mel Gibson. He loves his torture porn. As a Scotsman, if you had to redo or reboot Highlander, who is your Connor? James McAvoy would get my vote. Oh, interesting question. I think someone like Hugh Jackman could play it well. He's obviously a bit older now, but he's got that kind of physical presence. I think he could probably do the accent as well. He's pretty talented with that sort of thing. Yeah, I think the original choice of Christopher Lambert was a bit of an odd one. So you've got like a French guy playing a Scottish guy, and then with Sean Connery, you've got a Scottish guy playing some weird Egyptian descendant dude. So it was a bit of an odd film. Constantine, are Braveheart haters politically motivated and crying out about historical accuracy? It depends, really. Like, there'll be people who get bothered by the lack of accuracy. I think from a political point of view, I would imagine parties like the SNP, which is the Scottish Nationalist Party, they're always fighting for independence. Braveheart would be like their essential watching, like they probably watch it every morning. Billy Laptop, I love your originality. Another word for it is talent. Well, thank you very much. Most of the words that I would use to describe it are just luck. There's an awful lot of people out there on YouTube who never get their big break, even though they put in the work and they're just as entertaining. But some people get lucky and they have a video that does really well, and that gives them their platform. And I guess I was one of those guys, and I'm very grateful for that. Dane Hammett, do 2 videos a week, and I need my drinker fix. Cheers, drinker. Thank you, Dane. My general rule is at least 1 video a week, possibly 2. I'm always quite aware of the saying, like, familiarity breeds contempt, and I would not want to put out too many videos in short order, because there's actual channels that I've liked in the past that I've ended up being turned away from because I've just felt overwhelmed with the amount of content they were putting out. It was like too much. So yeah, I'm always kind of wary of just not overstaying my welcome a little bit with videos, and just kind of keeping a sort of laid back release schedule, I guess, and then making sure I actually put lots of effort into each script, because I wouldn't want to put out stuff that I was personally not satisfied with. I think probably a lot of content creators are much the same. Daniel V, big fan, wondering how you got into making video essays, and do you have any recommendations for people looking to do the same, e.g. how to write a good script and any good video editing programs? Well, first up, the program I use is VideoPad Professional. It's a pretty simple editor, but it's timeline based, so it's nice and intuitive in terms of what you're working with. In terms of writing your scripts, that's a tough one, because it has to be like what works for you. I don't think what you would want to do is copy someone else or try to emulate what they've done, because it might not suit your personality, it might not suit your style of delivery. But you want to, I guess my thing is, like, I would never want to make my scripts too long, because it becomes tedious to edit, and I think for people it becomes a little bit like tedious to listen to. I'm wary of going over 20 minutes, because I'm just quite aware by that point that's where people might start to tune out a little bit. But for myself, yeah, I try to raise as many insightful points as I can come up with about a movie or a TV show or whatever, and I like to give examples of other things you could do to make it better if it's really broken, and sometimes contrast that with other movies that are similar which actually worked really well. That's the approach I like to take with it. Barrett Long, if you're going to review a Godzilla movie, then you should probably do the Shin Godzilla. Also, you should maybe try the first 3 Halo games. Yeah, a lot to get through, I guess. I have played one of the Halo games. It was the one where Cortana dies at the end. Sorry for anyone who's not wanting spoilers about Halo, but I really enjoyed that. I think that was one that humanised the Master Chief a little bit more and had a bit more of a story to it. I was never a massive Halo player. I felt like they were pretty solid first-person shooters, but they never kind of blew me away. I don't think I got into that style of game. Can you do a walkthrough of Resident Evil 1 on the PlayStation? Honestly, man, I'd love to do that. I love the Resident Evil games, pretty much all of them, especially that original PS1 trilogy. I thought they were great fun to play, and actually, like even now, they hold up pretty well. They deliver a pretty solid gaming experience, and I think the thing that always impressed me about the first one is the kind of subtle choice system that the game's got. So you end up with lots of different endings, depending on just simple things that you do. You're never really presented with a choice. The game never tells you that you're actually going to be choosing something. It's just what you choose to do in a particular moment or where you choose to go can end up with, very different endings depending on that. So they're great games, and maybe one day I'll do a playthrough if anyone's actually interested in seeing me. I loved your reviews. Sorry, Charles Caballero. Loved your reviews on Rocky and Rocky 7, aka Creed. Have you thought of making a video on Creed 2 or Rocky 4 times 2? I would quite like to do Creed 2. I don't think my original Creed video got a huge amount of views. And I did it mostly because I was pissed off that it was a complete rip-off of the original Rocky. Creed 2 I actually thought was better just because it didn't portray Rocky in such a terrible light, and I liked Ivan Drago. I liked what they did with his character. They took the most one-dimensional, cartoonish character in the whole series and actually gave him an arc and gave him personality. So I think I really liked it. It certainly still had issues. I think Adonis Creed's still not a great character. But I'll see about doing a review. How about Silent Hill? Did you ever play any of those? Yeah, I played, again, the original PlayStation ones. I played Silent Hill 2. I can't remember if I played the third one, and then I sort of lost interest in them after that. They were great games, quite unsettling at times, which was impressive considering the graphic limitations. What's your favourite whiskey brand? Well, people always give me a lot of shit about drinking Jack Daniels. That's obviously something I do because it's recognisable for the video point of view. Like, my actual favourite whiskey is Laphroaig. That's a Scotch whiskey, and it's really smooth. I really like it. I recommend it to anyone. Hello, Drinker. What do you think about the newer Star Trek series Discovery? It's not off topic at all, so don't worry about that. I'm just talking about all things video game and TV related. Yeah, I only watched like the first 3 episodes of Discovery, and I just couldn't take it anymore. It was boring, and it was kind of preachy, and it didn't do it for me at all. And from what I've heard, it doesn't get much better after that. So yeah, I'd be reluctant to watch the rest of it. Thoughts on the Resident Evil 2 remake? I actually made a video about that, so I recommend watching it. It's probably more than I can put into words right here and now, but generally speaking, I thought it was pretty good. Captured the spirit of the original and gave it a welcome graphical update, so yeah, I enjoyed that one. Have you ever delved into manga or anime? I'm not really a manga reader. I appreciate the art style anyway, but I've not really had time for it. I have watched a few animes in my time. Probably my favourite is Metropolis. It's probably quite a mainstream one, but I really like that film. Very poignant ending, and yeah, it's definitely a movie I would recommend. The use of music and everything, the soundtrack is just incredible, especially at the finale. 2, I think that Ghostbusters 2020 will be a proper return to form. God, I really hope so. It can't have done much worse than Ghostbusters 2016. It's the best possible news, I think. I love the fact that the studios pretty much washed their hands of Ghostbusters 2016 and just said, look, we're starting again. We are going to continue with the characters that you actually like, and we're going to get a decent director who actually cares about the original material. and hopefully they'll do a decent job with it. If they can get Bill Murray to get properly on board, I think they've got a good shot. Obviously, we don't have Harold Ramis anymore. They could probably work a bit of a tribute towards him into it. I think that would be nice. It's kind of... Bill Murray's one of those guys that actually pisses me off, kind of, because they could have made a Ghostbusters 3 15 years ago and probably done a pretty good job with it, but he just kept stringing them along and just refusing to commit, and I think ultimately they lost their best chance of having a proper return to form. Now it's going to have to be a straight up, passing of the torch kind of movie. Could I outdrink Wolverine? I'd like to try, but I somehow doubt it, since he pretty much regenerates constantly. Why do I sound like a robot? I don't know if the audio's still fucking up here. I've got my mouth right up to the microphone, so I'm trying to cut out the echo. Hopefully it sounds alright. Have I seen the Human Centipede trilogy, and what do I think? I've seen the first one. A friend of mine saw the second one, and he said it almost made him spew, so that kind of turned me off it a little bit. And no, by that point I wasn't up for going back for the third one. They really took it. They took body horror to the next level, though. I liked it. Right, review Altered Carbon. Yeah, I enjoyed Altered Carbon, actually. It was one of those shows I always seem to find myself watching it late at night after I'd had a few drinks, which is, not that rare for me. And I felt like I never entirely understood what was going on, but the visuals and the characters and everything were great. And Joel Kinnaman was a real surprise, because the only other thing I'd seen him in was Suicide Squad, and he didn't exactly light up the screen there, so he's actually a really good guy. I liked him in it. What are my thoughts on The Expanse? So many people have asked me about that. I haven't got around to watching it yet, unfortunately. But I am going to make the time, because I really like the premise of it. It seems like it's almost like Game of Thrones in space. You've got all the different factions, and you've got the kind of politics and the brewing wars in the backgrounds. It's a show that I'm going to make time for. So yeah, give me some time, I'll try and watch it. Without Kirk, William Shatner, Star Trek sucks. I'm actually inclined to agree. Chris Pine, as good an actor as he is not Kirk. And I think for a lot of people he never will be. And I've made my thoughts known on the new Star Trek movies when I did my review of Into Darkness. I think they've been J.J. Abrams to within an inch of their life, and they're just nothing like the original. When I found myself to Darkness with Wrath of Khan, it was just a horrible, pale, dumb imitation. So yeah, it's a shame they never found a way to bring Shatner back. I think 10 years ago they probably could have done it in the sort of first of the new Star Trek movies. Now I guess he's too old, and there's not much chance of it ever happening. It seems like the movies are pretty much done, to be honest. They're back into just TV shows. So, right, Mitchell Gant. So you like Stargate SG? What about Atlantis or Universe? Or Deep Painful Sigh Origins? Yeah, Atlantis was pretty good. It's really weird to see Jason Momoa in that, thinking about what lay ahead for him. I like the concept of Atlantis, that they were kind of stuck on this city. And they had to try and re-establish contact with Earth, and some of the characters were pretty decent. I didn't watch much of Universe, to be honest, because I'd sort of checked out of the Stargate franchise by that point. I think after like 10 years of SG1 and a few more years of of Atlantis, I was pretty much done with it. I just couldn't think of anything more that I wanted to see there. Shatner is now too wide for 4K. Oh, brutal. What do I think about Tarantino starting a Star Trek movie? Directing a Star Trek movie, I guess you mean. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's a really, really weird fit. I don't know how Tarantino's style is going to fit into Star Trek, but whatever, we'll see what happens. I don't know what to make of it yet until we actually get some details about what's going to happen. Why the blank screen? I can't see what you're seeing, but I'm assuming you're just seeing my general background. Um, Otherwise, I'm not sure. Drinker, I was forced to watch Captain Marvel. Shit, it's bad. 20 minutes in and I had to turn it off. I don't blame you, to be honest. You probably saved another like hour and a half of your life, so yeah, you didn't miss much. I think it's really annoying that they marketed that movie as being essential viewing for Endgame when it completely wasn't. It was just any trick they could pull to get people to watch it. Yeah, I think the reason you guys are perhaps seeing a blank screen then is because I've got OBS on, but it's just outputting sound instead of video as well. Because if it outputs video, it's just going to put on my webcam, I think, and show you me. And I don't think any of you want to see that. Can you please review Game of Thrones season 1 to 4 and season 5? You know, the good seasons. I could. It feels like that ship's kind of sailed at this point. I don't know if I could bring myself to do an episode by episode review like I did of the 8th season. And nobody seems to like it when I'm being nice about things. I think it's, people appreciate it when I tear stuff apart, and that's definitely something I had to do with season 8 because it was just garbage and it was such a betrayal of the show. Have you tried to do a collaboration with Red Letter Media? No, I haven't spoken to them at all. I feel like they're a little bit out of my league because they've got like 10 times the number of viewers I've got, or subscribers. So, yeah, I think maybe that's going to have to wait for now. It would be amazing to work with them, don't get me wrong, but I don't think I'm quite at that level yet. I'm going to see what's going on with the audio actually because I think it's pissing a lot of people off. Let's see. Let me try that. Is that any better for anyone? So, someone's asking, what films do I think should never be remade? Well, the Back to the Future movies, please don't ever remake them. They were pretty much perfect. Alright, so I think people can hear me a little bit better now. The echo's maybe gone, hopefully. Hopefully that's better. Right, so, yeah, the funny thing with Star Trek is the TV Star Trek is owned by CBS and the movies are owned by Paramount, so there's going to be conflict there. I think I heard that CBS was going to buy the movies. Yeah, it's a total nightmare of a legal situation. From what I understand, the reason the movies look different and feel different from the original TV show is because of the licensing, and they had to be like 25% different visually and thematically in order for them to get away with it legally. Midnight's Edge has done some good videos on that. I think the entire situation takes about 2 hours to explain, so it's probably more than I can really cover here. But yeah, it's a weird one. But the result is a kind of shit end product that doesn't feel like Star Trek at all. Have I seen the new Top Gun trailer? Yes, I have, and I loved it. I made a video about how happy I was with it. Am I interested in the Blade reboot that's happening? Not if it's not R-rated, because I can't imagine Blade as this weird, like, sanitized, family-friendly Marvel movie. It would just be so wrong. So I hope they get it right. I was kind of disappointed not to see Wesley Snipes coming back. I think he's actually still capable of doing it, even if he played a slightly older version of Blade. But I can see why they wanted to cast a younger actor in the role. And the guy that they've got actually looks pretty decent. Once he's all kitted out in the Blade's costume, it should be halfway decent. I just don't know how well it's going to play out now. Like, Blade was another one of those movies that seemed like a bit of a product of its time. It was all about the leather trench coats and the sunglasses and the techno music, so it was so 90s. Hate Star. Oh yeah, Chris Shanks saying, "I hate Star Trek Discovery. Bring back Babylon 5." Yeah, I quite enjoyed Babylon 5 back in the day. Again, a show that was kind of about the politics and the characters and stuff, and actually pretty deep lore that went along with it. Like, it really felt like the universe that they created was well fleshed out, and I appreciated that. So I did like Babylon 5. What do I think about NoFap? What's that? Someone clue me in on that one. I might need an explanation. Bo Semler, Fandream. The drinker writes and directs Star Wars Episode 9. How would you fix it? Or can it be fixed? I think they're going to be struggling at this point. In order to fix it, you're going to have to either establish Kylo Ren as a viable villain by having him beat Rey at something, or introduce an even bigger villain than Snoke, or somehow resurrect Snoke. Because as it stands, it feels like there's nothing to play for. The Resistance no longer exists effectively. They're down to like a dozen people. The First Order has been pretty badly damaged, and Snoke is dead. All they've got left is Kylo Ren, and at the moment he's not a credible villain. So, fuck, man. I honestly don't know what they could do with it at this point. The Last Jedi screwed it up so badly. I think a time jump would probably be my recommendation. Bring it forward by several years. Perhaps the Resistance has managed to rebuild itself. Perhaps they've become a threat to the First Order again, and they're having to use like guerrilla hit and run tactics, or something like that. I just think it's kind of crippled. We don't even have a mystery around Rey anymore about her parents or anything like that. So I don't know what they could do. it would be a tough one. Give me like a couple of weeks and I could probably put together some kind of script ideas. No Fap is abstaining from masturbation like you're in the AA. No, I refuse to give it up. That's something I need as much as booze. Alright, so apparently the audio is good now. I think what it was, I had the speakers on my laptop enabled and it was picking me up that way. So I apologise. I imagine that was really fucking annoying to have to listen to. Any possibility of the boys review? Yes, I'm going to do one. There's a rumour they'll say that Palpatine was a Force vision all along in Episode 9. Yeah, I've heard all kinds of rumours about that movie. That Palpatine is just going to be a hologram recording, and that's what kind of originally inspired Kylo Ren to join like the dark side. It's nonsense. Palpatine's not a character you should bring back. Abrams literally said "fuck it" while making Episode 9. Yeah, I probably would have said the same thing. It's a lost cause, really, at this point. Have you read the Wheel of Time series? No, I haven't actually. They are extremely long books, and there's a whole bunch of them, so it's not a series that I've gotten around to reading yet. Obviously, they've been incredibly well reviewed, so I feel like I'm missing out a little bit, but yeah, it's another one of those things that I've just not had time for. Disney want to rule the film industry. Pretty much. They're buying like every franchise they can get their hands on and kind of ruining them. There's a lot of Fight Club chat here. Yes, I love Fight Club. As I was saying earlier, it's a movie that's more relevant now than it was even back then when it was released. I think there's a lot of people who, the points that the movie makes about people will do anything to avoid getting into a confrontation. They never release their aggression. They never really feel anything anymore because everything's sanitized. So yeah, I can see the appeal of that. I'm all for Project Mayhem, to be honest. I think we need a bit of it. Hello from Glen Rothis. Hello, S20 Mike. You're just down the road from me, so hello, my friend. Hope you're having a good evening. What's your favourite movie of all time? Fucking hell, that's a tough question. There's loads that have made a big impression on me. One of the ones that I always remember was Falling Down, the Michael Douglas movie. Probably some of you guys have seen it. It's a dude who's it's stuck in traffic one day in LA during the middle of a heat wave, and everything just kind of builds up and builds up. All his frustrations at not having a job anymore, and not being able to get where he's going, and people hating on him, and everything. And he just kind of snaps, and he goes on this rampage across the city. But I think it was such a well-played movie because he's indulging in all this destruction and violence against people who kind of deserve it because they're all assholes towards him. But he's not enjoying it. He's just a lost man trying to go home, and I think it's a brilliant character. It's a brilliant story. So it's definitely a movie that's stuck with me for a long time. It's one of my favourites. Keep up the videos, my dude. I love your content, and thank you for the attention on your Terminator Dark Fate video. No problem. I enjoyed making that video. It was something I'd wanted to say for a while, and it was just, yeah, it's one of those movies I can tell it's going to flop hard, and they're going to blame toxic fans for not supporting it, rather than the fact that it's just a shit movie that no one really wanted to see. Disney are the EA of the movies world. Yeah, pretty much. What's your opinion on the prequels? It's an interesting one. I said in my most recent video that like an idea is ultimately as good as its execution, and I think the prequels are a good example of that. They deal with actually a pretty interesting story about the rise of the Empire and the fall of Anakin Skywalker to the dark side. It's a good idea. It's just not well executed because George Lucas didn't have people reining him in, and he was given too much creative freedom to write the script and how he wanted. And what you ended up with was a pretty lame trilogy of movies. And it's a shame, really, because it could have been so great if it was properly managed and properly directed. I completely lost it when I saw that Rey reassembles the Death Star 2 with the Force and lifts it into orbit theory. I wouldn't be surprised, considering what they've done with Rey so far. She can do anything, man. Just embrace it. And if you don't, then you're just being sexist. Have you ever gone to Disney World, and will you ever go with the prices that keep on increasing each year? I have been multiple times, actually. The last time I went was October last year, and yeah, the prices are ridiculous. You know, the easiest way to do it is just buy yourself. Oh, I feel like my feed has just stopped there. That's weird. Sorry about that. Yeah, the best way to do it is just get yourself like a 2 week season pass because it's going to be so fucking expensive anyway, and then tan the arse out of it and go every day. But it's kind of ridiculous how expensive it is, especially if you ever want to eat in the parks. You know, just getting yourself like a burger and a beer will cost you like $40. It's awful. I think, yeah, sorry I was cutting out there. I think my connection just timed out for a second. Let me know if you can hear me okay now. What do I think about Sand and the hate for Hayden Christensen? I think it's a bit unfair on the guy, I guess. He did his best with pretty awful dialogue. And I do hate Sand because it's coarse and it gets everywhere. So, you know, who doesn't hate it? Greatest TV series of all time. Farscape. I love it. I can't say enough good things about that show, and I'm going to review it one day. Critical Drinker. I'm so sick of powerful women in movies. There are no strong women, only weak men. Yeah, I think, you know, James Cameron figured out how to write strong female characters without compromising the male ones to make them look better, and he did that like 30 years ago, but we seem to have forgotten how to do it now. So, yeah, it's a shame, really. I don't know why they've felt the need to do it this way, but it's not great how they write characters these days. It just turns you off them because they're never allowed to act like normal people, and they're never allowed to have the kind of banter and the back and forth that you expect from strong characters because they always have to portray one side as being better, and it ruins the kind of dialogue and it ruins the dynamic that you would expect. Right. They should have made Luke a hero in the new trilogy, but they made him a sellout and completely undermined the original trilogy. Yeah, they did. I've obviously spoken at length about how disappointed I was with their treatment of Luke. And it honestly felt like the movie kind of hated him, and it did everything it could to kill his character before he even died. He was just a burned out husk of a man, and it was awful to watch. Really, it just made me feel kind of sad to see him reduced to that, and particularly because everyone kind of looked up to Luke in the original trilogy. You know, male or female, it was a character that went beyond that, and it was the classic kind of hero's journey. And to see him go through that hero's journey, come out the other side, and then be reduced to nothing at the end was it was just gutting, really. We need a modern day Ripley. We really do. She was a great character, and I think particularly, well, the first two movies certainly showed an interesting character that is strong and capable and intelligent, but certainly not flawless. Like when she goes into the alien nest to retrieve Newt at the end, she's scared shitless, and you feel that, and that's how a real person would act in that situation, and that's what makes her character so much more compelling, because she's scared of what she's about to do, but she's doing it anyway because she feels compelled to. That's the heart of a good character, but that's what we seem to have forgotten now. So, okay, I've got a super chat here from Augie Stark. Would you like to see Grace Randolph? I'd like to see you and Grace Randolph rip apart Jessica Chastain in a video together. Yeah, I mean, any particular Jessica Chastain movie or just the actual actress? I don't have an issue with her particularly. As far as I know, she's a reasonable enough actress. But yeah, I'm not sure what else I could do there. Han should have gone out blasting, not like a dumb punk. Yeah, very much so. It would have been nice for him to die a hero's death instead of just getting skewered. Ripley or Sarah Connor? Oh, good question. Both amazing characters, both from like 30 years ago, which is a bit sad. I loved Sarah Connor in Terminator 2. The arc that her character goes through, I think I mentioned this in my Dark Fate video, that, you know, she gradually gets stripped of her humanity because she's so set on her goal. Just at the same time that the Terminator with her is kind of discovering what humanity actually means. It's a great kind of arc for the two of them. But I think Ripley probably edges it because she gets such great moments, and Sigourney Weaver invests her with such personality. Like I say, you really feel everything that she's going through, and she's not flawless, she's not perfect. She doesn't just outfight everyone, but she's in that lucky position where she's in a position to do something. And yeah, she's probably my favourite, but only just. Drinker, vid yourself climbing over Hadrian's Wall. One day, my friend, one day I'll move south and invade. What time is it where I'm at right now? It's 9 o'clock here. So I assume most of you guys are in America and we're like 5 hours ahead. Expectations for the upcoming Watchmen series. I'll reserve judgment for now. From what I understand, they're not going to be following the events of the graphic novel at all. It's kind of like an original story, which will be interesting. It just depends if the story's ultimately any good. I actually liked the Watchmen movie. I like the feel of it. I like the aesthetic of it. And again, it's much like The Boys. It's like this idea of what happens when superheroes go bad and they start to forget what they're actually fighting for. So, I mean, I would hope it keeps some of that same feeling of kind of grittiness and complexity that the movie had. Ripley, nice knickers. Yeah, you remember that shot from Alien, don't you? That was a really gratuitous crotch shot for no reason, but oh well. What franchise has been so comprehensively ruined on film or TV? God, there's so many now, that's the problem. It'd be easier to mention the stuff that's not been ruined. I think we can conclude that Star Wars has been run into the ground. Ghostbusters flirted with disaster and perhaps it might pull it back. Star Trek's certainly been ruined. From what I understand, Discovery's not particularly good, and it's very woke. The J.J. Abrams movies have been garbage, horrible, pale imitations of the original, and I'm not hearing good things about the Picard TV show. If the rumours are to be believed, it didn't test well at all, and now they're doing pretty extensive reshoots to try and correct it. I think to try and get as much of Alex Kurtzman out of it as possible. So we'll see how successful that is. But yeah, so many good franchises have been ruined in recent years, and I just don't know when it's going to end. They'll just run out of stuff to fuck up, I guess. I blame Mark Hamill for not standing up and protecting his character. So do I, actually. Like, people keep pointing out that he was under contract with Disney, with Lucasfilm, and then they got bought over by Disney, and he didn't really have a choice in the matter. Honestly, I think he could have perhaps exerted himself a bit more. Like, even threatened to walk off the production and just take whatever legal hit might have been thrown his way. Perhaps it would have been worth it to force their hand and rewrite his character a bit, because honestly, he must have been dying inside to have to perform the way he did and to say the lines he was given. He certainly now is pretty honest about how he felt, and I think what's going to be interesting once this new trilogy is over and done with and the various actors are out of contract, just to see what they actually think once they're free to express their real opinions on it, just to get their actual thoughts on it, because I bet they'll have something very interesting to say. Fast and the Furious. I love those movies. I just went and saw Hobbs and Shaw a week ago, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, they're movies that don't try to pretend to be anything more than they are. They're just big, dumb action movies that deliver lots of nice visuals and lots of nice locations. And they do it pretty well, and they've got a good cast that's fun to watch, so can't say fairer than that, really. You know what you're going to get when you see a Fast and the Furious movie, and I think the fact that they've been going on for so long is a pretty good indictment of how effective they are. Pete, I really enjoy your channel. Here's a few bucks to say thanks for the great content. Thanks, man, I really appreciate that, and I'll hopefully keep producing good content that you guys enjoy. The Picard show is ruined due to Captain Picard being literally a role in his own TV show. The young girl is front and centre as the main show star. Yeah, I had a slight worry about something like that happening, that they would try to introduce the next generation that's just ever so smart and better than Picard at everything, and he's the old useless guy that just has to tag along for the ride. I hope they have a bit more respect for him than that, and I hope Patrick Stewart's got a bit more self-respect than to come in and do something like that. Why bring back Billy D. Williams when all they're going to do is kill off the character? Again, good question. I think probably because Billy D. Williams hasn't got an awful lot going on right now, and he's willing to come back because it's a paycheck. I just wish he would have got into the gym or something before he filmed his scenes, because wow, he's twice the man he used to be. It's going to break my heart when woke culture comes for Dune and Warhammer 40k. Yeah, I don't know much about what they're doing with Dune. I know that there's been a big push to make female space marines in 40k, which is weird because it's always been drilled into the lore right from the beginning that they can only be male because it's only compatible with male biology. But you know, it's just a state of mind anyway, so I'm sure they'll find a way around that eventually. And Games Workshop will definitely bow to pressure on this one. I like how they made Admiral Akbar cry. Yeah. I read that story actually. The poor actor that was playing him got forced to do a joke on his final scene when he rapped. It's a shame, really. Like, I know Admiral Akbar is kind of a bit of a meme, and he's sort of famous for being not a joke, but you know, everyone takes him a bit tongue in cheek. But obviously, a lot to the actor playing him, and the fact that he felt like he was being disrespected is a real shame. But it just shows you who Rian Johnson is, I guess. Did I watch shows like Arrow and The Flash? No, I was more into the Marvel TV shows. I watched Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and a little bit of Iron Fist before it bored the arse off me and I just had to leave it. Those were decent shows though. I enjoyed them. I never really got into the Flash and the Arrowverse. I just never had time to watch them, unfortunately. Daisy Ridley and John Boyega don't appear to be busy after Star Wars. No, I wouldn't be surprised. John Boyega was in Pacific Rim Uprising, which was garbage, and that could be him as far as starring roles go. Will I cover the Boys TV show? Yes, I will. Don't worry. Did I like T2 Trainspotting? Not as much as the first movie. It didn't really recapture the same magic, and I think, times have kind of moved on. I don't think the original actors gave quite the same amount to it as they did before. Famous Grouse, in my opinion, it's shit because it's a blended whiskey. If you're going to have a proper Scotch whiskey, then you've got to have a single malt and get a good sort of Highland one. The Island ones are alright, but they're too peaty and smoky, and it can be kind of hard going at times. Yeah, people mentioning here it's Disney's kind of agenda to kill off the old characters and replace them with the new ones because it's all about merchandising rights. I don't know if this has ever been confirmed, this idea that George Lucas still owns the merchandising rights to the original characters, so whenever they're on screen, he gets a cut of the money from it, and that's why they've been trying to kill off all these characters. I don't know why. They must know that the original characters are why people watch these movies. The same with Creed. Nobody watched Creed because they cared about Adonis Creed. They cared about Rocky, and that's who they wanted to see. I went to The Force Awakens to see Han Solo and Princess Leia and Mark Hamill and got totally disappointed there. But yeah, it's just shooting themselves in the foot, really, by doing this. Michael Vieira, love your channel. Any plans to do a vid on the movies of Christopher Nolan or anything related? Um, I would like to. I just don't know where to start with them because there's not many of them that I could tear apart. They're good. The Dark Knight trilogy obviously did really interesting things with Batman. I enjoyed Interstellar. I enjoyed Dunkirk. He's a great director. I just don't know if I could make enough, or could get enough material from his movies to come up with a good video topic. I suppose I could do the Dark Knight trilogy as a whole and just give my thoughts on that. Lagavulin, yes, excellent whiskey, love it. Glenfiddich, it's fine, nothing remarkable, but it'll get you drunk pleasantly. Drinker, what's your favourite Edgar Wright film? Oh, good question. I love the Cornetto trilogy. Um, you know, Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, and World's End. They've all got something unique about them. They've all got something that recommends them. Shaun of the Dead was the funniest, I think, and the most fun I had with them because I love zombie movies, and it's such a brilliant take to see a zombie outbreak in Britain where people don't have guns and they're just completely unprepared. I liked Hot Fuzz because the screenwriting on that, the actual script and the story is airtight, like brilliantly well put together, and a brilliant homage to all these kind of cop dramas and action movies. And World's End, I actually found it quite a poignant movie. It's features lots of drinking, which I certainly support. But also the idea of these characters who had their best times were in school when they were teenagers, and the rest of their lives have been kind of letdowns after that. I think probably a lot of people can relate to that idea that you drift into some shitty job and like all your ambitions and your optimism about the future gradually kind of drains away as you get older. It's quite a meaningful story, I guess, beneath all the comedy, and it had some great fight scenes as well. So each of them are good, but probably Shaun of the Dead would be my favourite. What's your take on Bone Tomahawk? I haven't seen that movie and honestly haven't heard about it. I'm not sure I want to. Like, I've got a pretty strong stomach when it comes to gore, but from what I've heard, there's some fucking horrific scenes in that film. So, not sure if I'll be watching it anytime soon, but I'll keep it in mind anyway. Cricket bats seem very effective against zombies. I think they are because they're pretty solid. So they worked well in the movie. Do I watch Indian movies? I guess you mean like Bollywood movies. Not really. They're not that easy to access over here. There's a great one that I almost want to watch just because it seems so batshit crazy. It's the Robot movie. It's just called Robot, and it's got one of the most epic front covers I think I've ever seen. Yeah, it's like an action flick, and I think he's like a rip-off of the Terminator. So one day I'm going to see that and hopefully review it. How much money do you spend on alcohol on a monthly basis? I try not to keep track because I would get scared if I actually saw it. What do I think of American Werewolf in London? It's been a many years since I've seen that movie, but I do remember the actual like gore effects and everything being really good on it. The sort of transformation scene into a werewolf was a brilliant bit of practical effects, which you would just never get nowadays. I think it was a pretty good movie. It was kind of tongue in cheek from what I remember, so it was a good bit of kind of classic horror gore, but with a humorous edge to it. But I enjoyed it, I think, when I watched it. Grab a pint, sorry, from Adam Mead. Looking forward to your great commentary when the dumpster fire, The Rise of Skywalker releases. Is there any hope for Hollywood? Yeah, I'm looking forward to that movie too. I'm really looking forward to reviewing it. Is there any hope for it? Is there any hope for Hollywood? I think there will be. When they have enough failures, they'll eventually realise the mistakes that they've made, and they'll start to course correct. I just think it's a question of how much money they have to lose first. Apart from myself, who's my favourite film critic? In terms of YouTube, I really like Mahler's work. Obviously, he goes into insane amounts of depth with his reviews, but he definitely covers all the bases, and I like the fact that he doesn't rely on gimmicks or jokes or anything like that. He doesn't really play a character. He just gives really insightful reviews of films. I also like a guy called Shitcase Cinema who reviews a lot of older movies, and a lot of them are quite obscure ones. So he finds like the shittest films he can get his hands on and reviews them. And he's usually kind of drunk when he does it. So those are two of my favourites, I think. What was my favourite childhood cartoon? Wow. I used to enjoy Thundercats. They were fucking incredible, and they had the most epic intro tune ever. It was pure 80s, and it was amazing. I also enjoyed G.I. Joe back in the day. That was really good. What was the other one as well? There was... it was another like action type movie. There was one called Pirates of Darkwater, which is probably really obscure now, but it was like a fantasy thing set on like an alien planet, where like the seas were getting gradually taken over by like these horrible monsters and stuff, and the main characters were like pirates trying to fight their way out of it, and that was really cool too. You just don't get TV shows like that now. You don't get cartoons like that now, which are just like balls to the wall insane. Minimum alcohol pricing, dick move or right move? A bit of both, really. In case you guys aren't familiar, they have raised the minimum price on alcohol in Scotland because we've got such a problem with alcohol abuse here. So it's just basically meant that you can't get really cheap stuff anymore. I don't think it's going to solve anything. It just means that the people who buy booze and who are alcoholics are just going to be even more hard up because they're having to spend more money on booze. So I don't think it's going to fix anything really. If you're going to try and tackle that kind of problem in society, it's more of a cultural thing. Is George Lucas an idiot or a genius? He did sell Star Wars before it went to shit. He has moments of idiocy and moments of genius. He's a guy who needs to be managed, I think. Probably the prequel trilogy is evidence of that. He's a guy who has great concepts and great story ideas. He just needs a person there to manage the details and turn it into a good end product. But wow, he's a savvy businessman. His original deals where he retained the merchandising rights for all Star Wars products made him a billionaire ultimately. And if what we're hearing now is true, that he retains a lot of the royalties from the original characters, again, smart move. It's resulted in a bad product for us, unfortunately, if Disney are trying to kill off the original characters, but he's making his money out of it, so fair enough. James Cameron or Christopher Nolan, will Avatar movies live up? I would take early James Cameron over Nolan, probably any day. Producing movies like Aliens, Terminator 2, even The Abyss, just incredible films that made such an impact. Even something like Titanic, like as a love story, that's just ridiculous, but as a disaster movie, it's pretty fucking impressive. The fact that they got an entire replica of the ship that they could sink, that's the sort of thing that only a guy like Cameron could do. So I would probably take him. As it is now, I would definitely take Nolan over Cameron any day, because Avatar was a shit story, and I think the sequels are going to be awful. Paul Tilliard, go away. I will go away soon, but I'm not ready to go yet, so you go away. Someone told me that the Last Jedi subplot at the casino was required to get Finn to come all the way to the side of the Resistance and not be selfish and want to only save Rey. What are my thoughts on that? That is bonkers if that's true. He had already come over to the side of the Resistance at the end of the last movie. I don't know. his entire character arc in The Last Jedi was just a repeat of what he'd already done, and it was just insane the way they treated him. He was a guy who'd already gotten behind the cause of the Resistance, and it's weird that he's treated as like this coward in The Last Jedi when actually he was trying to help Rey. Yeah, I think the Last Jedi horribly misunderstood his character. It misunderstood where he'd been, and it misunderstood where he needed to go next. I think it would have been great to have a plot with like Poe and Finn together, because they spark off each other so well, and have Finn actually transition into that hero character without all the shit they had to put him through. Lieutenant Colonel Nicholson, don't forget Shoot or Be Shot. It's a great movie. No need to wear SJW blinders for that one. Check out Devon Stack Blackpilled. Good stuff. Yeah, it seems like I'm going to have to watch this Shoot or Be Shot. I will make a note of that to get onto it after this. Titanic is a horror flick. Rose murdered Jack. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was space on that big piece of wood that they could have both sat on. What's my thoughts on Escape from New York? Great movie. Pretty understated considering what they did with Escape from LA, which was just kind of a joke. I like the setting of it. It introduced the character of Snake Plissken, which is a really interesting character actually, and really played well by Kurt Russell. It's one of those ones, I don't know if they could ever remake it. It would be interesting to see what they could do with it though. Titanic equals pre-woke Hollywood programming. Yeah, it's a totally sexist movie because it's women and children first on the lifeboats, so if it was going to be progressive, they'd have to let everyone on at the same time. Am I a theatre goer? Musicals and plays? I'm not as cultured as that, unfortunately. Probably the most cultured thing I went and saw was The Book of Mormon, which is absolutely amazing. I recommend that to everyone. The Last Jedi, they release the animals on the casino planet and leave the kids who are enslaved. Oh well. Yeah. It's a perfect example of how simplistic the story is there, where it's like, we've caused all this destruction, like we won't mind about who has to clean it up, which is the slaves, and we're releasing these animals into the wild when they've been domesticated and they probably don't have a clue how to survive, and it's probably slaves that are going to get sent out to round them up anyway. So yeah, just a brilliant metaphor for how pointless that movie is. Liam Neeson shot himself in the foot when he said he stands for gun control. No more certain skills for him, what a hypocrite. Yeah, Liam Neeson's made some strange comments recently. I do recall that thing he said about wanting to target people of a certain race because a friend of his got attacked. I sort of understand what he was trying to get across there. He was trying to make a point of like how easily people can get swayed by hate, but honestly, you can't be saying things like that in the current climate. That's just insanity. He's probably really snookered his career there. Commando is the best manly action movie ever. Yes, it is. Commando and Predator were some of Schwarzenegger's finest work. I love Commando, especially the fight against Bennett. It's just absolute insanity. I love how electricity makes him stronger instead of dead. And I love how Schwarzenegger impales him with a fucking pipe. Great movie, and just the most over-the-top action scenes ever. You just don't get films like that anymore. The Ocean's 11 trilogy, general opinion, pretty good, pretty self-indulgent. I think the first one was really good. After that, they started to go downhill pretty rapidly. It was also really weird that they played on Julia Roberts' character looking like the real Julia Roberts. Like, wouldn't they then be saying, well, Danny happens to look like George Clooney and Rusty looks like Brad Pitt? Like, you can't really play those kinds of games when it's an all-star cast. So yeah, it got a bit silly, and I haven't actually seen Ocean's 8 yet. From what I've heard, I'm not missing much. Will Obi-Wan finally end slavery on Tatooine in his series? I'm excited about seeing Ewan McGregor back, but I don't know why they made it into a TV series. I would rather he just got a movie. I don't think that's the sort of thing I want to see spun out that far. His is a character that just needs to have a short arc to get him to where he was, I guess, in the events of A New Hope. I think the problem as well is that you've limited him to what he can do. He's in exile now. He has to stay on that planet because that's where he's been his whole life when Luke meets him. So I don't know what they can do there. But it is nice to see Ewan McGregor come back. You can tell that it means a lot to him, and he's obviously been up for doing it again. It would have been interesting to see if they could ever bring Hayden Christensen back in some role, because I feel like he could do with a bit of redemption as well. What about Mad Max with the kids' cargo cult? Yeah, Mad Max 3. Good movies. I like that idea that they've got all this technology around them that they don't even understand anymore. It's just like magical to them. And when he uses a gun for the first time, they're like, holy shit, I didn't know it could do this. I actually really liked the new Mad Max movie with Charlize Theron. Good incredible action scenes that it was done mostly with practical effects, and they actually created a pretty decent character there. It's just a shame that Mad Max kind of took second place to Furiosa. It would have been better if he had a bit more of a story in it. He's just like an observer almost. Please not. Please don't disturb my friend. He's dead tired. Yeah, only Schwarzenegger can deliver a deadpan line like that. It's great. John Robertson, have you seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Do you plan on seeing it and doing a review? I think this has been asked already. I am planning on seeing it next week, hopefully. I just not had a chance to get round to it yet. But the kind of praise that I've heard for it makes me want to see it. I think you've got two great actors there with Pitt and DiCaprio, so yeah, it should be good, and I hopefully can do a review on it at some point. Oh, thoughts on Jordan Peele? He's gotten a lot of hype like he's the new Hitchcock or Kubrick, which is BS, and I wasn't impressed with Get Out or Us. Yeah, it's interesting. The latest video I did about themes in movies, I was actually going to segue into talking about Us and doing a review of that, because that is a movie where the themes and the undertones totally overshadow the plot and undermine it. It's completely ludicrous when you actually think about any of the realities of it. I haven't seen Get Out yet, but I was really unimpressed with Us. And I think if he's one of those directors who just tries to cram a really heavy-handed subtext into everything he does, he's not going to get a good write-up from me. But I might actually just do a full review of Us, because it is a movie that I kind of want to talk about and tear into a bit. Have I watched Das Boot? I know they've remade it. I haven't seen the remake, but I've seen the original, and I thought it was a brilliant TV series. I think it's interesting to see, something like that from the German point of view, and how horrific it probably was being in a U-boat in World War II. You've got all the kind of claustrophobic elements of being in this tin can, and the fear of like being depth charged and it getting crushed by the hull pressure and stuff. It was a great show, and I don't know if the remake's any good, but hopefully I get around to watching it at some point. I know the podcast scene is pretty saturated at the moment, but would you ever consider starting one? I mean, I do have the Drinkers on Happy Hour where I'm going to bring guests in each time I do it. It's going to be semi-regular because I don't want to get too absorbed in live streaming and podcasting and stuff. I'd rather focus on making properly structured videos, but it's fun to do sometimes. Drinker, I've been battling with the Last Jedi lovers with all the points you make in your videos. Thanks. Happy to help. So many people have talked about that movie and torn it to shreds. It blows my mind that people still think it's a smart, clever, brilliant piece of cinema. I just don't get it. What's the drinker's ethnicity of food? Italian, French, American? I mean, I presume you're asking, like, what's my favourite kinds of food? Um, I will take anything that's got lots of stodge and meat in it, basically. Um, yeah, I don't really have a specific one. Everyone's loving Das Boot here. I don't know if the love is for the original or the remake. Submarines suck. Aircraft carriers are where it's at. Yeah, I'd much rather be on an aircraft carrier than a submarine, to be honest. Beast of War, Russians in Afghanistan. Great movie from an unusual perspective. It really is, actually. That's a conflict that you don't hear much about, and you certainly don't see it from the Russian point of view. But I do remember that movie as being really like surprising and really well put together, and it shows the Afghan conflict from both sides. Like the Russian tank crew are just kind of desperate to escape, and the Afghan rebels who are fighting them are humanized, and you get to see how kind of awful their situation is through the eyes of a guy who gets captured by them. So really good movie, and I never see it on TV or anything anymore, so it's one of those forgotten films, but I do recommend Beast of War. It's really good. Have you seen Big Trouble in Little China? Do you think it's a movie that could be made in today's climate? I love Big Trouble in Little China. It definitely couldn't be made today. I think it's a lovely slice of 80s cheese. Kurt Russell is just unsurpassed in that film. He's epic in every way, and it's a movie that's it's really smart, actually, that it managed to subvert our expectations, but in a good way, because Kurt Russell's kind of made to look like he's the protagonist of the story, but he's not the one who actually does anything heroic. He's just like the bumbling sidekick, but he's got so much charisma that he pulls it off. Do I really think that Disney's going to move forward with Rian Johnson's trilogy? I don't think so. I know he mentioned something the other day about it, how it's going to be a total departure from any of the established characters. I don't think anyone gives a fuck. I think he is box office poison at this point. If anyone, if it comes to the point where there's actually another Rian Johnson directed Star Wars movie coming out, people will just shit all over it, and it'll get boycotted. I think they'll allow it to trundle on for a bit longer, and then just gradually quieten down on that, and then they'll probably put out some statement saying that he's moved on to other projects or something. But yeah, I really can't see it happening. I honestly don't know what they'll do in terms of Star Wars movies after Episode 9 comes out, because if it flops, they could be sunk in terms of producing more Star Wars films. They might have just established that the series is no longer viable for the amount of money that they have to invest in making it. So, yeah, watch this space, but I can't see him getting one. Could Star Wars get worse? Yeah, it could if Rey reassembles the Death Star and lifts it up using the power of the Force. Yeah, there's more ways that they can screw it up, but I think they're gonna have to work hard to top The Last Jedi, because I think now the problem is no one's got any interest in it. There's no expectations like there were with The Last Jedi. It'll just be a sad end, I guess. Harry McDowell, your channel is one of the first that I get rather happy with the notification comes through. Could we hear your review of The Expanse soon? I'll need to watch it first, Harry. Like I was saying earlier, I've heard really good things about it and I like the setup of it. I just haven't had a chance to watch it yet. So when I eventually do, I'd be happy to do a review. Patrick Mao, opinions on Terrence Malick. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on Terrence Malick, if I'm honest with you. I don't know what I can say on that one. I apologise. I don't feel like I've got much I can contribute there. Does the critical drinker drink red wine or only the hard stuff? I do drink red wine on occasion. I've got no particular alcohol that I'm against, and especially with food, red wine or white wine is just fine with me. Inner Space, one of the great unsung movies of the 1980s. Yeah, it was great. Dennis Quaid. God. A movie that's set inside the human body like that is always going to be kind of special. And I like the character of Jack Potter. No, sorry. Yeah, Jack Potter, that was his name. Like the guy who's a complete wimp. And he gradually discovers a little bit of courage through having these conversations with Dennis Quaid's character. It's a bonkers movie, but it's really fun. It's all in the reflexes. Yup. Classic Jack Burton line there. Anyone else think Jurassic Park is overrated? Interesting question. I think the Jurassic World movies are terrible. Just rehashing the same concept, and I no idea what Fallen Kingdom was supposed to be, but I can tell you that it wasn't fun or interesting. But the original Jurassic Park movie, I really enjoyed. It brought up some really interesting ideas, and for its time, like the special effects, seeing dinosaurs on screen that didn't look like big rubber models was a pretty amazing experience. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was overrated. I'm just trying to catch up on the chat here because I've fallen behind a little bit. Yeah, Highlander 1 is a masterpiece and Highlander 2 isn't. Yeah, I don't think many people would argue on that one. The first movie, again, really strange casting, amazing soundtrack, and quite an interesting theme. Well, I shouldn't say theme actually, because I don't want to go down that road again. But a really interesting setup. You know, the idea of these immortals that have lived through centuries of human history. It's really cool. It's just a shame that none of the sequels ever lived up to that original idea. Have you watched many of Razor Fist's movie reviews? I suspect the two of you would get along. I haven't actually watched Razor Fist, no. I might have to give him a go in that case. Jurassic Park still holds up visually, like T2. Yeah, I think the reason being it limited the use of dinosaurs. You don't actually see them on screen all that much, and when you actually feels really significant and special, and so it works from that point of view. Can they fix the Nightmare on Elm Street movies? Would I want to see Freddy back? I think at this point, probably not, because they've done about 20 of them by this point. The only really good one, from what I remember, was the first one, because it actually felt like a horror movie, and then Freddy's character just got progressively more comedic and silly, and so it stopped being scary, and then they just turned into a bit of a farce. And I think now I would struggle to see it come back now. I'm sure they did do a remake of it a few years ago, and they had the guy who played Rorschach from the Watchmen in the role of Freddy Krueger, but I've never seen it. That was a series that I burned out on. Remake Woke 2001, never going to happen. Don't bet on it. I'm sure they could have an all-female crew of astronauts, and HAL 9000 becomes like a female computer. It's just a matter of time. Who has the worst opinion on classic games, Snowman or Dean Takashi? Also, please spend an EFAP talking about Snowman's NES video. Yeah, I haven't seen Snowman. I've seen and heard all about Dean Takashi, how he's basically shit at video games and he shouldn't really be talking about them or reviewing them. I'm going to be on EFAP on Thursday, actually, on the 22nd, because they're doing like a 24-hour one, and I'm going to be there for at least part of it. I'm certainly not doing the whole 24 hours, but I will talk about what I'm commanded to talk about by the powers that be. Skriob, Krull, is it an 80s classic or a terrible, awful mistake? No, it's a glorious, terrible mistake. Krull is a unique movie. I liked fantasy movies back in the 80s because they made absolutely no sense. It was just a bunch of random stuff happening. You didn't know what was going on, but you just enjoyed it for what it was, and Krull's a perfect example of that. I remember the bit that always stuck out for me in Krull was the Cyclops dying like the most horrible death ever. He got crushed between two walls. And he knew how he was going to die because that was apparently his gift, to know how his life was going to end. So horrible, but good movie. And I would actually watch it again sometime, because movies like that just don't come along anymore. The Loch Ness Monster is asking me, do you follow boxing as a fan of the Rocky movies? I dip in and out of it. I like Anthony Joshua, so I watch most of his fights. I like Tyson Fury. I love that he's made a comeback. I think the problem with boxing now is you don't get as many characters as you used to. You don't get people who have real personality, but Tyson's one of those guys. So, he's always entertaining. And, I try to make time for boxing when I can. There's certainly big fights that I like to watch. Let's see. Sir Con Jonington, $5 for booze. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I will use it, and I'll put it to good use for booze. You have to admit, He-Man was bullshit though, lol. Yeah, it was. He had a very unique look about him, and I don't think you could really replicate that these days. It was a more innocent time, shall we say, and people didn't judge movies by the same standards they do nowadays. Don't forget Red Sonja too. Yeah, good movie in a lot of ways. It was weird that Arnold Schwarzenegger came back as Conan, but not really as Conan because they had to give his character a different name or something. But Bridget Nielsen, man, back in the day, she was all right. Ghostbusters 2016, hands down the worst reboot ever. It was just lame. It was, yeah. I think that'll go down in history as probably the worst because it was that unique combination of like a terrible idea and a reboot, and just terrible directing and terrible writing. It all just came together into a perfect storm of shittiness. The problem is people didn't seem to learn from it and spawned more and more remakes and sort of woke takes on original movies. PE's donated $2 and said, "Drinker, I quit beer and I'm sad." Well, I can suggest one cure for that, and it involves beer. How do I think Cobra Kai will end? Oh, it's an interesting show because it manages to keep surprising me. It does really subvert my expectations. The end of the first season certainly did. And what's happened at the end of season 2 pretty effectively has as well. I think it's a show that it still has pretty inventive writers. It maybe has leaned a little too heavily on the young characters and abandoned some of the older ones, or let them fall by the wayside a little bit in season 2. So hopefully they'll put that right. I'd like to see, and I think probably what they will do is have Johnny reconcile with Daniel at some point. I think they'll have a proper fight and then eventually put their differences aside. Do I play any video or computer games? Yeah, I haven't done as much video game content recently, just because I'm quite aware most of people probably watch my my videos for movies and TV shows and that sort of thing. But I do play games. I have since I was like 5 years old. My parents gave me an Atari 2600, which was ridiculously out of date even back then. But yeah, at the moment I am playing Metro Exodus and I'm really enjoying it. So I'll hopefully do a review on that. I did have a series back in the day called Games That Ruined My Childhood as well. Like just games that really fucked me over when I was a kid because they were just ridiculously hard. I'd like to do a few more of them actually. Do I think the Alien franchise is done? Pretty much. Alien Covenant killed whatever chance it had. It has to get away from Ridley Scott if it's ever going to succeed again. He's not the guy to be doing it. He's pursuing these grand, pretentious ideas about the nature of existence and where humanity comes from and stuff. The Alien movies is not the vehicle to do that sort of thing. So, yeah, he has to let it go. And if they can find a decent action sort of horror director to do something more along the lines of the first Alien, or even Aliens, potentially. But I think it's a franchise that's kind of done now. Same with the Predator movies. They had one great film that started it off. The second one was halfway decent, and then it just became garbage after that. Which Clint Eastwood movie would I like to see remade? One of my favourite Clint Eastwood movies of all time was Pale Rider, where he plays like a preacher that comes into a mining town to sort of settle a dispute because the local people are getting tormented by like a big gang that's rode into town. It's kind of a classic Western story, but it's got this kind of supernatural element to it, and I just always remembered it. I thought it was a really haunting kind of movie, and very, very atmospheric, very effective, and great kind of performances all round. I just don't know who you could ever replace Clint Eastwood with because he's just unmatched when it comes to roles like that. Tom Hardy should be the next Bond. I guess potentially. He's certainly a great actor. I just don't think he's got the look for Bond. I just think he's maybe too short. He's too stocky. He doesn't have the kind of good looks, I guess, that you would expect from Bond. He's a bit more normal looking, I guess, is the word. He wouldn't necessarily be my first choice. I always thought Henry Cavill could have played Bond pretty well if he perhaps slimmed down a little bit, because he's quite muscly at the moment. Should Ridley Scott just stop making movies in general? Yeah, he should. He's too old now. He's lost track of what made his movies good in the first place. He's done some incredible stuff in his career, but it's time to call it a day, I think. And on the subject of calling it a day, I am kind of out of time here. I've really had a good time doing this live stream with you guys. Like I say, I did it mainly because I wanted to give everyone a chance to talk to me and ask me questions, and I would try and get through as many of them as possible. Hopefully you've all been entertained when you've been listening to this and you've gotten something out of it. But yeah, I'm probably going to call it a day there, go off and pass out for a while, and I hope the rest of you guys have a pleasant evening or a pleasant afternoon, and drink one for me, I guess. And look out for my next video soon. So that's all I've got for today. Go away now.